classes a week.
Allow us to journey into these altered states.
It really whacked me psyche though, big time.
If you just sit reading books, it's the shadow because you're not going to be in your body.
Welcome to Creating Space, bringing people together. Real conversations with real people, telling stories and sharing our gifts right here in the heart of Liverpool, inspiring new ideas, education and co-creation.
Choose a challenge that lights you up and is going to make a difference in the world.
Creating Space.
Sponsored by the Scouse Guru app.
Okay, welcome back everybody. This is episode 22 of Creating Space, the platform where I get to express my gifts as a human being, and where we get to bring on some lovely people onto the studio and just talk about, all matters related to the human experience, really, meditation, spirituality, psychotherapy, and just get under the skin with it, really. I think my intention is to share stories, offer fresh perspectives, and just to have some fun in the process. I'm a big fan of listening to podcasts, and I've been for a number of years. So I think it's just great to have people along. And today we've got a great friend of mine in Rainbow Goddess, my friend Bo, and we're in the Liverpool podcasting studios in Liverpool. So thank you for tuning in. So I think today's conversation is, it can go everywhere and anywhere. When Bo and I get together, we talk about so many different matters. And I think I'm certainly inspired to lean into Bo's story today and what she does and how she serves the world. Bo's a mother. She's currently in university, but, she's got credentials as long as my arm, with all matters related to service to humanity. So it was a very, very exciting conversation that I was looking to have for a while. And Bo and I have known each other over a few years, and we've shared so many wonderful moments as a celebration. And yeah, it's great to have Bo here. We've been in the car, we're talking about, the mother wound, and we're talking about patriarchal society, and we're talking about psychedelics. And so I'm not sure really where our first in is going to be in here, Bo, but I think when we get going and when we let it flow, then I just trust it goes where it's meant to go. So, sister,
grab a cup of tea and a biscuit.
Yeah, too. I've got my coffee here, you know what I mean?
Come along for the ride. Come over the rainbow, the Rainbow Goddess.
Good to see you, mate.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming up to Liverpool today.
Oh, it's such an honour and a privilege, really. Thank you so much.
Nice to just get out the village for a minute, get out the town, isn't it? And, you've come over and we've just been having a nice time already. We walked the dogs, haven't we? And have a bit of food later and just chill out. And we just like to hold space for one another and be in each other's company. I love you so much.
I love you too.
Yeah. So how are you feeling then just today coming over from Liverpool? We were actually talking a little bit about what's going on in the current affairs in the world as well, weren't we? And we were linking it into the stuff that certainly is almost a passion of ours and things. There tends to be a lot of coherence with our conversations because it's almost what lights us up, isn't it? And it's what interests us as well. So let's almost just circle back a little bit to the current situation, potentially what's going on with Ukraine, and then I know from there it'll offer a platform for a movement in the directions that we like to talk about.
So let's just first take a breath. This is a really big situation, what's going on the planet, isn't it? There's a lot of children, women, men, humans just like me and you that are really suffering, no fault of their own. We've, as a humanity, over the last few thousand years, taken this course into a domination culture where we have this system of politics and we get given a very limited choice of people that haven't done any work on themselves to lead us, and they make decisions based on their worldview, their morality, the level of awareness. And unfortunately, in this time, you've got these white, privileged, really traumatized, I believe, men who've been pushed by aristocratic families, not been loved, not been nurtured enough, and then they're given this massive power, including weapons of war, and they believe about these boundaries, these ideas of boundary. Each part of the world is a segment that belongs to one of these men, these wounded men, these lost little boys. And so it's like those games you see, of boys in the playground at school just getting at each other. And unfortunately, the perspective's so limited, the wounds are so deep, they can't stretch out that compassion to realise how much they're going to hurt, not just the people, but the planet, not just the planet, but the collective psyche, and how deeply these wounds go. Transgenerational trauma spans 7 years back and 7 years forward. So this now, what's happening, has been building. It's in the DNA of these guys, passed on from their fathers, and it's going to take us a long time to clean it up. So just blessing. First of all, Putin, his wounded little heart. How afraid must he be? How afraid must he be to have to wage war? How much power must he be needing to feel, because deep inside he's powerless? Just blessing him in his life and his integrity, And then all the people that are being hurt by this, just blessing them and their families and just praying for peace. Really been working to ground into peace and working with the mantra, I am peace. I emanate peace. I am peace. I radiate peace. As a practice, what more can I do? Single mum, I'm a scholar, I'm a shamaness. I'm stretched to the limit energetically, and still, how can I serve? And that's it. And if any refugees need a place, you're so welcome to come and be with me and my little boy in our house. And let's encourage anyone, to open the house to these refugees. What would we need if we started getting bombed right now? What would we need? We'd be so afraid. We'd want to go somewhere and be safe and be held.
The thought of just actually, imagine it was happening to us, and the thought of actually having to go home now, pack all your bags, get your kids, and where would you go?
Where would you go?
Do you know what I mean? Where would you go? What would be your first trail of thoughts, and who would you take with you, and what would you take with you? And it's just the thought alone offers a compassionate edge. You think, oh my goodness me, all these people in Ukraine, and and how afraid and how lost and how desperate they must be feeling at this time.
Really encouraging people, to not get caught up in the media storms about all of this, and just sit, light a candle, and just practice that I am peace, I emanate peace. There's teachings from all different religious and spiritual backgrounds, tracing back till we can't even go back any further. And one I like is this idea of there being 5 layers, 5 subtle layers, or the 5 koshas. And when you move beyond the mind body, the physical body, the energetic body, the emotional body, there's just that stillness, that bliss body that's left, that remains, where we can melt into the all that is. And just encouraging people to take some breaths through each one of those bodies, like rest the mind and all of its madness, rest the emotions and all of the turbulence, rest the physical body down onto the ground and let it melt and be held, rest the spirit that takes on so much, the spirit that wants to become so much, just rest that and just melt then into what's left. I am peace, I radiate peace. And enjoy a bit of that for yourself, because life, even though we're not being bombed, it's still crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even though we're privileged.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's still crazy. And we were talking about that in the car on the way here, weren't we? Yeah. This idea of needing to be seen, needing to be acknowledged.
Yeah. I think nowadays there's so much emphasis on the promotion, validation, and seeking of this image, that of our identity. And, we were talking about almost this collective paradigm where a lot of people are pretty much in a place of scarcity and lack. and because of a lack of values and understanding what we prioritize, and almost a belief system that we're not good enough. You know, a lot of people can end up in what we may call the rat race, you know, and living almost hand to mouth, working in a system, a dehydrated system. And that's why we almost reach for instant gratification, you know, or we wait for the Friday to relax, and we don't, you know, we're almost being governed by time. We're a slave to a system. And I think certainly with the work that you and I are both inspired to share with the world is giving people a platform to understand and to awaken a greater sense of self-awareness, to disciple our own lives and potentially create our own mini cultures, you know, where we can come back together, where we can celebrate life, where we can step into a flow state, where we can, you know, feel a level of deep abundance and sacredness, you know, because these things are, you know, I feel, I mean, you even mentioned sacred nowadays in our Western culture, and it's like sacredness. What does that even mean anymore? Do you know what I mean? And we were talking about the human experience and the connection to our humanness. I mean, we've been domesticated, haven't we? We live in boxes, we work in boxes, we drive in these boxes, and there's almost this lack of connectedness that we're missing out on to ourselves and to each other and to a greater pool of society, that we're incredibly fragmented, I feel, you know, and suppressed. And then what comes that suppression is a level of depression, and it's incredibly sad to see, you know, and I know we offer a service and a compassionate heart to almost wake people up out of maybe this collective dream and paradigm.
Help them to heal it.
Yeah.
You know, the things that put us there run so deep. So deep. If we go back right to the beginning, there's an amazing researcher called Gare, and she has this idea, metaformic theory. So millennia ago, there were primates on this planet, and the female primates and the male primates lived together. There was an alpha male, and there was a tribe of female primates and children. And the female primates all of a sudden just realised that when the moon was gone from the sky, blood came out of the yonis. And then there was this first inkling of abstract thought or meditation, contemplation. And that's what started civilization or a humanity. And with then this female primate who noticed that pulled one of her sisters in with her, and she noticed too, and wordlessly they gestured to each other. So there was this conversation then outside of instinct, outside of animalistic behaviour. And then from there, the females started to think more about the children, and they stood up to the alpha male and said, look, we need more resources for us to have a better time as a tribe. We need more resources. So this idea of the mother, the wise feminine, stepping up and saying, look, you know, we need more power, we need more providence, more providence, so we need to get more males. And that was hard for that alpha male, you know, like letting go of. But he knew too, and he followed the wisdom, and the other males came, and then we had this tribe. And over the history, then we become Homo sapien, our frontal lobes have developed. We've developed a greater propensity for abstract thought, for creativity. And now we're in this era where we talk about spiritual intelligence. So we've gone from having kind of an emotional intelligence and instinct to having an intelligence quotient, which is your IQ, which is like the ration and logic, working things out, problem solving.
Intellect.
And now we've got this spiritual intelligence, which includes, you know, pondering on the beauty of things and making music just for the sake of making music, not because it serves us in some way. And along the way, our egos have developed as well, haven't they? And we've had tribes against tribes, and this element of battling and competition. You know, we've gone from being one tribe to being separate tribes, and you know that's ended up in this position what we're in now, right? But we need to look at healing all of that to come back together as a humanity, so that then boundaries, not just of the countries, but the boundaries that we have in ourselves, the boundaries in our heart that make us selfish, that makes us keep hold of things and not share it with the rest of the tribe. You know, these people that, you know, you were talking about this model not being good enough. So the war that's being waged against the people through economy, big business, beauty industry, you know, like having your house to look a certain way, these certain trainers, this certain clothing, this certain car, all of it makes money for another different tribe. And instead of waging war with weapons, they wage war against your psyche. Yeah. You know, through psychology as a part of our intellect, we understand now how to manipulate humans and how to manipulate the heart of humans. And all of these things, you know, cause things like robberies, people with low self-esteem, people with lack. You know, they need to steal things off other people, right? And so no one's really to blame. It's just been a big happening on this planet. But right now we're in this time of prophecy, this awakening, this what's been prophesied by a lot of those ancient mystic traditions, what I mentioned earlier, this age right now, the end of the Kali Yuga in Hinduism, or the dawning of the age of Aquarius in New Ageism, and all of these things. And you can see it happening, can't you? People are coming more and more to find healing, to move through these layers of the inauthentic self, to come home to the heart, to live from the heart, to find the authentic tribe, and then putting themselves in service to the rest of humanity. So how do we support more of that in ourselves? How do we support more of that in the other? You know, and that's where we're at. And we were talking about will, weren't we, before? The will, human will, power of will, autonomy, you know, being able to make decisions for yourself. And I've wrestled with this a lot in my life. You know, my traumas have brought me to addictions, and sitting there like not wanting to smoke that joint again and wanting to do the good things for myself instead, and being so caught in that place and not being able to use my will to serve me. What's that all about? So right now we've got this opportunity to look at that. How can we really turn our will towards the good? How can we turn our will towards the good? And that's the stories, isn't it? All of the big stories, good against evil, fighting the good against the evil. And there's this tool in there, and the baddies want it, and the goodies want to get it because the goodies will use it for the good. But if the baddies get it, they're going to use it for the bad, and the earth's going to end. That's it, isn't it? Yeah. And that's what we're at now. We've got this tool, which is the power of the heart, the sacred heart, and the gnosis, that all of the powers of the universe are bending towards this. And we can choose. You've got to choose which side are you going to be on. Yeah. Haven't you? I
mean, you know, it's funny because almost two things are sticking out here. Is I'm feeling, you know, you're talking away, I'm thinking, wow, I believe that there's potentially an opportunity for self-acceptance, and then I also acceptance in a greater sense, because not everyone's going to resonate with everybody, are they? We naturally accept people and we naturally reject people, and almost there's this sort of left wing and right wing. You know, there's the cowboys and then the Indians, and we're almost not accepting each other in our indifferences, and potentially the acceptance in our indifferences offers maybe a compassionate bridge. You know, instead of the polarity of separation, you know, where we are competing with each other. Because right wing and left wing, to their perspective, they're both right, aren't they? You know what I mean? So it's potentially offering a neutrality, a bridge of compassion, of acceptance, which is potentially going to merge, you know, a soulful connection for us to, you know, almost live and abide with each other, but also honouring each other's perspectives, you know, in whatever in the way we think and the way we behave.
Well, you mentioned before this idea of sacred, and what's coming to me now. So I am doing a master's, like you mentioned, in transpersonal psychology, consciousness and spirituality. And I'm privy now to some of the most pioneering science and some of the most incredible philosophical minds, which are all focusing on this problem, how do we turn all of the hearts of humanity towards the greater good? How do we support humanity as one tribe to remember and reclaim that they are sacred and that every single facet of this experience is sacred? Not just humanity, but every animal, every plant, everything that's a part of this organism of the manifest universe. And there's this thread running through, which is about, there's the self, which is the you, that's got the story of this life, and also the story and the genetics of your ancestry, and humanity as a collective. Then you've got the self that can transcend that. So we might call that soul, higher self, spirit, this other aspect of you that is eternal, that's outside of the body and outside of humanity. But then you've also got the one self that holds all of that, which is cosmos, creation.
Yeah, universe, godliness.
Yeah, and
Brahma.
we are that as well.
Yeah.
And there's no beginning and no end.
Yeah.
And it's all a bit of, am I allowed to swear?
Absolutely.
It's all a bit of a mindfuck, innit? Let's be honest, it's all a bit of a mindfuck. But transpersonal psychology is trying to say, right, there's these three streams of consciousness then all going on at the same time. What we want is to ground it all in with the power of the will, with the power of the mind, using some of these tools, what we've learned a bit about, like meditation, like different healing modalities. It's kind of like clear the debris in the I self stream to connect into the transcendental self stream, the higher self stream, which has got so many gifts.
Yeah.
Like that's what Rainbow Goddess is. I started off life as Haley.
Yeah.
And I got these deep messages working with Mother Mushroom, which we might come to. And then all this other stuff unravels, this stuff about life purpose, about sacred service, and then using the mind as a tool and the I self and the higher self working together, mulching that little selfish self that wants to keep it all to itself and coming through from the heart, and then you become more and more of the creator. So you're co-creating with that third dimension, which is everything all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So these ideas about how can we encourage more and more of that? And so when you talked about cowboys and Indians, this thing came about being grateful, because the Indians, they didn't want to be the cowboys, did they? And the cowboys didn't want to be the Indians, but they both needed each other.
Yeah.
So they had to be grateful for the other. And when you think about some of the cosmological stories of how creation came into being, I love this one by, what's her name now? It might come to me, but she did a lot of channeling of energies called the Palladians. And the idea was that there was this original sense of the oneself, and it became aware of itself.
Yeah.
And in the becoming aware of itself, it had its first kind of experience of consciousness.
Yeah.
So that's when consciousness was born.
Yeah.
And then it needed to split off from itself so that it could observe itself, so that it could be manifest. Because you'll know this, when you're rattling around at home on your own, no one's seeing, no one's witnessing, and it's just, it could be that no one's listening, or that it's not even happening. Like when they say, when a tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear it? So if there's no witness, how can anything be fully manifest? And so we need the other to be manifest.
That's right.
And we need the other to show us the parts, what we can't see, where we could do a bit more buffering and a bit more polishing, so that we can bring in more of the higher self, so that we can merge and be in service to this sense of morality for the greater good. And so when we go back to like people like Putin, like he's a part of this experience. He's not outside of creation and this evil force. That's a part of the human experience, a part of the higher self experience, and a part of creation. So how do we hold that and bend it towards the will of the greater good.
I mean, listening to you, what was springing to mind there is a teacher. I actually can't. It's just on the tip of my tongue right now, and he talks about waking up to a sense of awareness. But then he talks about growing up. Like certainly taking a look at how we behave and the psyche, and potentially noticing the motivations and intentions behind our behaviour.
Dr. Mark Gaffney.
It's not him, but
he has that.
Yeah.
Wake up, grow up, clean up, show up.
That's it. But it's not him. I'm Ken Wilber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of the fathers of transpersonal psychology.
Yeah, it's Ken Wilber.
Yeah.
And so this opportunity to clean up, to take ownership, to take responsibility, and then to show up in a place of, okay, I'm a human. There's a greater intelligence. I believe almost potentially one of the greatest choices that we can make is to surrender our free will, or my will, the personal will, to the will of the divine. So there's it's going from a sense of mine to thy. And then which almost takes us back to a collective experience and wanting to potentially share a spontaneous, heart-led experience rather than ever, because we get into the head, don't we? We get into the mind, don't we? We think about, we have this intellect and we have an opportunity to project to the future and to think about the past. But I think we just get stuck in them realms, don't we? Because we're so attached to the separate self, the egoic identity. We're almost predicting and projecting a future. And it takes us away from the present moment, and it takes us away from being spontaneous. It takes us away from grounding in peace. It takes us away from resting in the peace. We almost go on this pilgrimage in this search for something that we already are. And the opportunity to remember our humanness, and then have to surrender and abide in almost this great intelligence that we're multi-levels of intelligence, but we're not listening anymore, are we? I think we're so invested in the intellect, and life can become such a heady process. We're not remembering almost that space, which is almost, it's like pre-psychology, isn't it? You know what I mean? That essence, that soulful experience, that timeless, joyful, peaceful abidance. And I think if we can certainly have that opportunity to take a look compassionately at our fragmented systems and collective paradigms, and go on a journey of presence and healing, and togetherness. But where does this all start? It only starts with self, doesn't it, Bo? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's an inside job, this, isn't it? It takes an element of willingness, certainly.
Courage.
Massive
courage.
It's not,
it's really the realms of the unknown. If you think about this patriarchal construct, people like Maria Gamboutas, amazing scientists, archaeologists, have looked back through history, and there were no weapons of war. There were egalitarian societies on the planet. Right now, Bruce Parry's doing a talk around all the festivals about his film that he's made about these 8 different tribes in the Amazon and his search for human nature. He wanted to believe that it was empathetic and equal and, loving, and that we weren't this selfish kind of race. And he went to visit 8 different tribes, and he was giving up. By the 7th, he was like, no, everyone's just full of ego. There's loads of hierarchy everywhere. And the last one he came across, they've lived in the jungle for 200,000 years, and just been nomadic, shared resources with the other individual tribes like them, and they've got enough. They've never needed to change. They've accepted that that's beautiful, and they just want to protect it. So their own rule is no one ever gets bigger than anybody else. There's never any hierarchy, and we just maintain this paradise. And they saw it there, and the difference was that the women were in their power. They hadn't been suppressed and oppressed. And so this takes me back to that good mother archetype, the good mother archetype that's been missing in the collective, because we've not been held, we've not been shown that it's okay to feel pain. So now what you've got is this more than a pandemic, a global pandemic of mental ill health because we're trying to work everything out from the head. And because men and women have different experiences through the body, we lead from different places as well. Different things become valuable in the psyche of the two genders. And I know we're getting into, the realms of like transgender and just really holding space for all of that conversation. But just coming back now, this original kind of design, I suppose, male or female, with the sexual anatomy, science is showing it really influences the psyche. So what we've had is these kind of white, privileged, educated, industrialized men leading the way. Freud, as a father of psychotherapy, his ideas about Oedipus complex and stuff really coming from his own kind of like patriarchal attitudes. And because the good mother's been missing, she's not kept us all like in touch with the intuition and the emotion. So we've all gone ration and logic because these two ways of knowing that the only ways of knowing. Then we've built these academic institutions, and because of the suppression of the feminine and the devaluing of the feminine, women weren't actually allowed to be in schools. They weren't actually allowed to go to medical schools and things like that. So they haven't been involved in shaping institutions of support. So you've got these like mental health support systems now, which are all built on this same kind of patriarchal idea about what humanity is, what humanity needs. Yeah. But we've all got such different needs. And then, so we're afraid to go into the emotions and the intuition. We're afraid to go there because we've forgotten how to work in those places. It's been thousands and thousands of years that we've been winding ourselves away from it. And what we've lost is magic. Yeah. We've lost connection. We've lost the sacredness of life. We've lost this ability to be able to communicate with the plants and the animals. We've lost this idea of being really important in the tribe, and having to fight for a place to fit a certain shape, and we're going to these academic institutions as a child way before we're ready, way before our brains have developed. Actually, it's 7 years old when we're academically ready to learn, and we're pushed, and we're standardised, and that impacts our self-esteem as well. And we're in those spaces with caregivers who haven't seen us develop for the first few years of our life. They don't know who we individually are or what we individually need, and we get standardised. So that teaches us to shut down our own need, and it makes us internalise ourselves. And I've just actually been writing a piece about spirituality and breastfeeding and this whole pathology of motherhood and postnatal depression being a cultural maladaptation, actually. The mother's not being supported to be organically available. So we substitute presence and compassion with technology, bottles, dummies, so that the mother can get on. But all that's doing is pushing that child deeper and deeper in. And the research that they've done is finding genetic links. So shorter durations of breastfeeding and absence of breastfeeding is implicating neuropsychological deficits and psychopathology in adulthood later on. So the genetic expression, so environment switches on or switches off genes, we know that now. So the genetic expression in the genome was the internalization of emotions. So what we're doing is not being held by tribe. We're not knowing that we can go and be who we really are because it's not safe, and it just all gets shut down. So when it comes to healing and it comes to going and being in that internal space that's beyond the mind, it's so uncharted territory. There's so many wounds around it. Just some people, first, when they come to me and work with me, it's about getting them to feel safe enough to cry. What's that about? Getting them to feel safe enough to cry. And this idea that to go and get healing, we don't go to our own families. We don't do it with our own mothers. We go and pay a stranger who's learned and spent years, studying how to work with these things, and we have to pay loads of money. So that means that only the privileged people get access to the really good healing. And that's wrong. So you've got all these marginalised people, that just like eking the way through life with all these wars against the psyche, not learning how to be in the bodies. It's just such a shame, that we've got to this place. But, like we've been saying, it's this age of prophecy, it's the turning, and we can look and we can think, right, what resources have I got? YouTube's the It's free.
Yeah.
There's loads of little practices on there, what you can start with.
Yeah.
Even just starting to learn like what you teach about meditation, just being in the stillness, learning to just sit, learning to calm the mind and calm the emotional realm, to feel into that other layer that's beyond that, to get to know the different aspects of yourself, to get to know your higher self, you know, to call in support of the celestial realms, to call in support of your ancestors, you know, to start kind of dreaming like the shamanic realms teach. You know, you can go into the other worlds using your tool of your mind and your imagination and get to explore in these different dimensions.
Yeah.
And then you've got more extreme things like the psychedelics.
Yeah, the mother mushroom.
Like, mother mushroom. Breath works, for example.
Yeah.
You know, these are like really fast track ways of just bursting out of these shells.
Challenging the belief systems, you know, taking us almost beyond our belief systems and points of view, and offering an opportunity to open the mind again, you know, and then to rest in almost the beginner's mind, in a place of newness, you know, but there's that opportunity to become, but also that opportunity to be at the same time. I mean, you know, that's why for me, I always do bring it back to the meditation journey, because I think it's such a, almost no matter where anyone is in their own sort of story, that the meditation will nurture your nature, you know, because if we sit still, for example, in the act of practice, and stabilize our awareness or our attention, it's the same thing, but attention is just, it's when the awareness becomes a one-pointed focus. It's being hijacked all day, Bo. You know what I mean? Our attention's being hijacked all day, every day, especially with these, you know, with these phones, you know, or with social media, or you know, with the razzmatazz of life, I suppose, and so we can almost not just get lost in our own head and in our own movie, but we can get lost in other people's movies, you know, and having that opportunity to stabilize your awareness and bring it to the present moment, which can be a challenging experience to even our ego, because it's a lack of stimulation. You know what I mean? The ego is almost wants to be stimulated. It's become normalized that we reach for the next best thing to almost feel, you know. And
like an addiction to informational input, sensory input. We're addicted to it. Yeah.
And so the meditation journey, when we stabilize our awareness and give the body an opportunity to actually do what it knows to do, which is to rest, which is to go into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is to hydrate itself and recover and regenerate. And at the level of the body, you know, you're in a different part of the brain. The brain waves, you're checking in with an alpha state, a theta state. You know, we're accessing our creative senses, our genius. And then the body almost, it upregulates the immune system. We release cortisol, we release oxytocin, melatonin, serotonin, and then we're resting on our nature, and all we're doing is very much stabilizing our awareness. And so it's an incredible platform to remember what we've forgotten and to abide in such naturalness.
I love this idea of restoration. I've just finished restorative yoga teacher training, and this has been so fundamental for me to have that time to allow the body to be still, to still the mind, and to just, like you say, rest, switching on that parasympathetic nervous system activity, allowing the body to heal itself, and beyond just being in awareness and training awareness so that the mind can be still and so that you can have more of a connection with your own power of will. It's about integrating trauma. So you see in the wild, when a gazelle gets chased by a lion, if it gets away, at the first opportunity it gets, it'll lie down and it'll shake. So it releases the trauma out of the nervous system. And when it comes to trauma, a lot of people are doing it. We're not allowing the process to come to completion.
Yeah.
So when we go to therapy or we sit down with any kind of healing modality, what we're trying to do is get those wounds to completion. EMDR, for example, that's one really good mechanism for supporting that. But the idea is that you find this thread of a memory in the system and you just keep working with it until all the fragmented parts come back together. But a lot of these modalities are like, in a way, reprocessing.
Yeah.
Some of it's really old, some of it's transgenerational, some of it's multidimensional,
Yeah.
and it can be quite intense. So I also advocate for this restorative stillness as a way of integrating trauma,
Yeah.
not just getting your own autonomy on track, finding some center in the madness. Like you said, what was the word you used to describe the self? But I was going to say it's more like a storm, like there's a storm going on, there's a whirlwind going on. And what these tools enable is for you to come and be in the center of it.
Yeah.
You remember that film? And at the end, there was a tornado twister.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they had to go and they belted themselves.
They end up in the middle.
They're in the middle of the storm. And it's such a peaceful,
Yeah.
like, reverent moment,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like, and that's what all the great meditation teachers talk about. Doesn't matter what's going on the outside. If you can have a strong sense of being able to sit in the eye of the storm, that's where the peace is.
Yeah.
That's where the peace is. And then you might find that your trauma's integrating. You might find that you're calmer in life, that you can handle things more. You've got a greater capacity because your nervous system's, rebalancing itself. It's got a greater capacity to hold the madness. But you also might find that in that peace, revelations come, voices, secret whispers from who knows where can give you good information,
Yeah.
wisdom,
Yeah.
not just this sensory overload informational input that's come from the mind of men and women, but this ancient cosmological wisdom,
Yeah.
that speaks to you, that can help guide you. And then from there, then you've got this pathway, right?
I think what's beautiful here is, we can both agree that meditation can be a platform for integration, certainly, especially when we do start to explore different modalities of healing. And it can almost just offer more of a steady progression through, a journey of integration and healing, and then there is these modalities, we talk about psychedelics, or we can talk about...
I think we should talk about them.
I definitely think we should talk about them. And obviously just, counselling, psychotherapy, breathwork, yoga, these have the opportunity to almost allow the trauma to potentially bubble to the surface, which can be challenging and confusing and sticky and ugly, and certainly because it's not just a one-stop fix, is it? You know what I mean?
No.
Sometimes people think, I'll go to the Amazon, I'll go and drink ayahuasca, or I'll go and do a breathwork session, and it's almost the integration to these things is just as important, or even the preparation is just as important as the process.
Yeah.
But I think it's not just like, I'm going to the jungle this one time, and I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes you only need that one time, and it's gonna humble you, it's gonna shatter your belief systems. But I like the approach of certainly just almost working compassionately and softly on a daily basis.
There's a new word now called titration that's coming out with this trauma awareness as we're developing. And titration means just let the lid off a little bit, then put the lid back on.
Yeah.
Have some time to let the bubbles fizz back down.
Nice.
Like when you've got
like a
a
Coke
fizzy
bottle,
drink from the shop. You go steady with it, don't you? You
that's
go
right.
steady with it.
Yeah, I like that. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, and that's acknowledging how a human system, our human body is a massive part of this. And it can only take so much before it's exhausted.
Yeah.
And with all this, what you've been talking about, overload of Western industrialized culture, then what I've been talking about the eons and eons of trauma, and everything in the psyche that we have to cope with, we need to give our body a break.
Yeah.
And so this space for resting And this idea that walking a path that's slow and steady with self-acceptance, knowing your limits, not wanting too much for yourself too soon, that's really wise.
But we're not creating enough space, are we, really, in our lives to rest or to digest, to recover, to heal. I think, they're almost... I bring in this narrative of like all or nothing, you know what I mean? And everyone is like, right, well, I need to be on it. And they're almost just cracking the whip against life. They're chasing a dream. And then there's not enough rest. There's not enough time and space to be. We've become just doers. And a lot of the time people are doing stuff and they don't even know the motivation and intention behind what they're doing. So there's layers to this. And if we can come back and almost set a boundary, start setting some boundaries, say no, and start to rest, then it's innately encoded in us to remember this experience. And that is, for me, starting to remember our humanness and to be ourselves and to allow space for rest, without feeling guilty as such, or without being afraid of other people pointing fingers that you're being lazy, Let's talk about psychedelics then, because I know that's a modality that we're both familiar with. And, we've both explored in a very, I have to be careful of the word sort of ceremonial, even though it's been in a ceremonial setting. I like to maybe use the word, for me, it's been in a sacred celebration experience, you know what I mean? Because sometimes people think ceremony and then, it's, I don't know, it's maybe triggered me, that word, recently, do you know what I mean? So I know for many years, exploring psychedelics in many different sets and settings, it's brought a level of healing, a level of revelation, a level of celebration, and it's humbled me on so many levels for me to be led by the heart and to be led, from a place where I want to serve others as well as serving myself. And so where did all that potentially start for you? All this stuff we're talking about, there's, there may have been an inception for you here. Do you know what I mean? We just maybe backtrack into your life a little bit.
Do you know when people ask me this question, like, when did you have your awakening? When did you become conscious?
Yeah,
this kind of question. And I can never find a beginning. I've always been a seeker. And I've always had this motivation in me, like this real feeling like, how can I help? How can I serve? I've just always had it there. And recently I've heard that Socrates had this feeling and he called it the daimon. Socrates' daimon. And this pull sometimes, and other people could call it a calling.
Yeah.
A calling. And I was called as a part of this thread of my life, after being really young and, rejecting the religious dogma of my family, really sitting in the church and thinking, this ain't right. There's something deeper here. And I actually rang up the local priest when I was really young and said, I want to come and have a chat with you. I went and sat in the church with him, and them houses what they have next to the church, and asking him these questions, and he had no idea. He just could not answer any of my questions at all. And neither could my family. And so I was always questioning, always seeking. That's what I call myself. I'm a seeker. And he ended up through following these threads and these longings to learn more so that I could be of greater service. I ended up in Guatemala. And there I met a lady and she taught me a bit about shamanism and, just collected bits here and there and everywhere along the way. And somewhere along the way, I don't know, just this calling to work with Mother Mushroom came in, and journeying in altered states, like you say, has brought deep revelations, guidance, pointings. And then alongside of the shamanic path, there's also been this path of scholarship. So when I was in Guatemala, I got encouraged, like this part of this diamond, if you want to call it that. It's got its own consciousness, and it could be my higher self, this second stream of conscious experience, what I mentioned before, that's guiding me beyond my individual self towards mergence with the cosmological self. And so this thread in Guatemala was saying, you need to go back to the UK and get paper power, because it recognised that the elder in the West now is science. That's the elder. We don't go and seek guidance from wise grandmas and granddads anymore, unless you're lucky and you've got that in your family.
Yeah.
Don't go and seek it. And, you know, they've all been wounded by the religious dogmas and by the wars and by this separatism and, you know, all these wars that are being waged on the psyche by economy. So they've lost their wisdom. They've lost that sense of sacred will. And so, yeah, this idea of paper power, go back to the UK, get yourself some paper power, and then you can have more of a voice that can be influential towards this kind of like guiding question. How can I heal more of the pain in the world, and how can I heal more of the pain in me? And that's really been it. And it's a real honour and a privilege. And every time, like, I get given these downloads, and it's not just with working with altered states, it's also been working with like ritualistic journeys. So, for example, doing retreats, weekend retreats, 3-day retreats, and I'll be given a download, I call it, or this idea, this inspiration. And the Druids, I don't know if you know, but they talk about this concept of the Arwen. And the Arwen is this muse, this creative muse that's like a thread of consciousness that can inspire, you know. And the old poets, we used to have really good poets, they'd have a muse that would inspire them to write and create. And so this thread, this Arwen, just encouraging me, like, this is what you need to do now. This is what's important now to help to heal the pain of the world and help to heal more of the pain of yourself. So I'd design these amazing, like, retreat programs, and I'd have people doing all kinds. Like, once there was Witches and Warlocks weekend, and we're in a field at Samhain, Halloween, which is one of the 4 pagan festivals of the year. And it's about celebrating the ancestors and, you know, the last harvest before we'd go into the winter, where we'd have to be really careful with, you know, the rations and things like that. And, and they had them dressed up as witches and warlocks, and they had broomsticks, and we taught the ancient magic about the broom and the hazel and the silver birch and the ancient way of opening a sacred space and honouring that lineage, you know. And Hecate, who's this archetype of the goddess of the witches, and this time of kind of like death, you know, and honouring the death. And we made a potion from a sycamore tree over a cauldron. It was all really, you know, a magical experience. We worked with breath work that weekend, and we worked with this honouring of the ancestors, and we also worked with beautiful, beloved Mother Mushroom to kind of simulate one of the journeys that the ancient wise women would have gone on. So they'd mix hemlock and fly agaric, you know, and these other kind of hallucinogenic plants from nature. They'd mix it, and then they'd rub it onto the broomsticks, and they'd masturbate with the broomsticks because it's deadly if you ingest it.
Wow.
So you have to put it through the mucous membrane.
Wow.
And so witches don't ride on broomsticks. They'd masturbate with the medicine, call it medicine, on the broomsticks. And then they'd have these altered states of consciousness journeys. Now, I'm not gifted in the use of these poisons, and I haven't got an elder. And so to simulate that kind of experience, we work with mushrooms and had a journey and guided people to set off from the top of the sycamore tree in the mind's eye.
I'm guessing then they're just ingesting the mushrooms through the mouth.
Yeah. And then, we weren't masturbating collectively with broomsticks. We weren't. Although,
just for anyone listening here, you know, firstly, we're not inviting anyone to do masturbate with broomsticks, and secondly, we're certainly not inviting anyone to go.
Hemlock.
And don't eat. And we're not actually inviting you to ingest the mushrooms here. We're just having an open conversation on some of the experiences we've personally had. So just to put that out there.
But no, you know, like, I've done lots of academic stuff. This is the second master's I'm doing, and it's the right time. There wasn't the right stuff out there before. It wasn't the right time. Although I've learned so much stuff and of some amazing academic teachers like Joe Delaney, who's at Edge Hill.
Yeah.
He's an incredible
He's a
guy.
lovely fella, him.
I really just got so much from him. He looked at me in the eye and he said, "You are like a wild horse. You've got that much power." He said, "But it's all over the place. You need to rein it in, make it like a laser beam."
Yeah.
And he said, "And watch you go then, girl."
Nice.
And I've really been on one for the last 15 years with this scholarship and shamanic, working in the intuitive, being guided, listening to that higher self. And that's what brought me to become Rainbow Goddess and take on this persona, And then now in this master's program, there's modules on psychedelics and entheogens.
Yeah.
And there's all these texts now, Jesus and the Lost Goddess, talking about the ancient womb religions before the patriarchal construct takeover, where the women would know all the wisdom of the herbs and the plants, and they'd be bringing the community into these ritualistic celebrations of the passing of the year. And each member of that community, when they were going through a different threshold of their life, especially the girls and the menage, when they get that first bleed, the high priestesses would bring all of the community together in celebration. So we'd all be coming back together all the time. And so there's the revelation going on now of what's gone on in the planet before, and that psychedelics, especially the mushrooms, I feel, keeping us in contact with the mind of the Mother Earth. And you think about the mycelium networks, it's like the neuronal networks of the brain, and then they pop up these flowers, the mushrooms, and you get to cross over the consciousness barrier from yourself and your higher self and merge with the consciousness of the earth. And the earth itself is this conscious, sentient being that's going on this journey of evolution. And so Mother Mushroom can come in, help you to see the bigger picture, help you to remember your place, and help, like when we see trees that have fallen in the jungle or in the woods, the mushrooms can then help to mulch all of that, that decaying body that once was one part of life, one item of life, one consciousness, a tree or a plant, and then it gets mulched and it becomes the fertile compost, which can help more life to grow. So when things are in ourselves that are dying, that aren't serving us anymore, like these wounds, she can come into the body and help us to mulch it, to be supportive, to hold us in that process. Like the children get held by the mother to the breast when they're sad or afraid. We hold children, like when they're afraid, we cuddle them. She can hold us and help us to remember that it's okay to let it out, to feel safe to let it out. But then, like any other good mother, she also can show you an inkling of the potential of your life, who you are, and encourage you with it. And like any other good mother can give you advice on how to do that. And so she'll give you pointers. And then it's up to you then to integrate that teaching.
To act upon it.
To act, to take those steps, and to pray for more worthiness. Really, to pray for more worthiness and to look at the areas where you don't feel worthy as a part of your human experience, and to forgive the perpetrations that put those wounds in, and to forgive yourself for perpetrating as well, and to keep mulching and keep mulching and keep working to embody more and more and more of your own sanctity, your own sacredness, so that you can come back to that, again, that power of sacred will to serve the greater good of yourself, of your communities, of humanity.
Because there is such a massive movement now going on, especially with the active compound of psilocybin, isn't there? You know, with regards to medication, healing, embodiment, all that kind of stuff. And I know that is, so there's a whole academic side of it now, isn't there? You know
the clinical side. So it started off with John Hopkins University in London, and Professor David Nutt and Robin Carhart Harris. And they, who knows what they'd done? Will they ever tell their story? Who knows?
Yeah.
But they crowdfunded some research, and it was kind of like a re-enchantment of the psychedelics in clinical literature, because Albert Hoffman, the father of LSD, you know, he did a lot of work with it in the 50s and it was showing amazing results, yeah, but through fear, you know, because also along that time there was a lot of LSD going on in the 60s and, you know, happy tripping and all of that kind of movement and the new age era on the planet. And, you know, these powers that be, these people that are afraid of freedom because it shakes the foundation of their story of like, what are we in now? Capitalism?
Yeah.
Democracy or whatever they're calling the political story at the moment. It shakes that, doesn't it? It shakes that structure of society. And so it all got shut down through fear. And so now you've got this idea where something that's never killed anybody, that's only beneficial for people, is illegal because of a law that scheduled it as a class 1 drug, which means that it's harmful, but it's not. And so because it's a Schedule 1, in order to do science on it, you need to jump through so many hoops. It's really, really hard to do science on it. And so these people work really, really hard to get a generic thread of psilocybin that they made, that they could keep it the same all the time as a control. And then they raise loads of money through a crowdfunding campaign because they couldn't get a research body that invests in research to give them the money to do it. And then they managed to get 20 people into a clinical trial and they gave them a series of
measured doses of psilocybin.
And then over that series, they worked with them outside of that psychotherapeutically, you know, with the mind to integrate what came up, what were the threads that came up. But what also came out of that was if you don't carry on doing it, these clinical depressions set back in. And those individuals were outside of a culture that was all on board with this way of being with psychedelics as a medicine. And you think about, you know, the shamanic tribes in the Amazon that do the ayahuasca, or, you know, in Gabon where you've got Iboga, or, you know, in Mexico with Maria Sabina who was doing mushrooms with her culture and her community. You know, you go and have these journeys with your family and with your mates. And then you come out of it and you're talking about it and you're integrating it together. You don't have to hide it. But in this situation, you had what I was saying before, you're going to this stranger, you're paying them money, and then they're helping you, and you're going home to your wife and your family who have no idea, trying to explain all this stuff about trauma and multidimensional trauma and these insights you got about your higher self in a culture that has really no idea, you know, and it's just so hard to integrate that.
Because then you're perceived almost by the people around you that you're going mad.
Exactly.
He's gone off his head.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's this other thing about a spiritual emergency that we're talking about now, like Groff and Groff. They did a lot of work with psychedelics. They've got the Esalen Institute in California and they work with LSD and holotropic breath work. And a lot of that's to do rebirthing. So they go back into where you were in the womb, where you had this near-death experience when you were being born and pushed through the vaginal canal, where you're being suffocated almost to the end of your life, you know, and this traumatic experience. Not only that, when you're in the womb, if there's trauma going on in your family's life, are you taking all of that on? And so he's journeying people back to that really, really early part of your life to help to heal some of those, like, almost like primordial aspects of the stuff that you took on, you know, and working in that way. And it's all showing, you know, great promise and great benefit. But what we've still got is this culture that wants to capitalise off it. So you've got this company now called Compass, and they're doing psychedelic assisted therapy. And believe it or not, they've actually managed to get a patent on soft furnishings. Soft furnishings. So if anybody else uses psychedelics now with soft furnishings, they're going against that patent, and Compass can sue them. And they're on the stock market. Now, you watch them figures, they're going up and up and up and up and up. And a part of me, you know, wanting to manifest abundance in my life, thinks I should put all my savings into that company. But it's just not in integrity. You know, you've got Boris Johnson coming out saying, oh, we might look at, you know, scheduling it as a class 2 drug so that we can study it. But then you've got other countries around the world who are celebrating it like, no, that's a part of people's spiritual development. You've got loads of countries now that are decriminalising the use of psychedelics for personal and spiritual growth. And that's what we want in our country. We want Boris to go, we don't want to make a load of money off this. This is for the people. Here, go on. How do we make safe space? How do we help people if they've had a bad experience? How do we, you know, what I foresee, right, is when I've done my PhD, Dr. Rainbow Goddess, you're going to go to your doctors for mild depressive symptoms, and he's going to say, here's your prescription for your mushroom ceremony with Dr. Rainbow Goddess. That's what we want, to bring back the feminine priestess, to bring back the sanctity, not to go and sit in some cold clinical room with a stranger who's not giving you any power of your own autonomy, having this big experience, and then you're just going to go and work it all out in the head in the therapy room.
Yeah.
No, we need to give the power back to people, bring them back to what's sacred, you know, and then work together as like more of a family, as a community, you know, with this kind of like loving mother presence. And that can be a woman or a man, you know, just as long as they're working from the heart, because I think these ideas about the clinician, you know, it's like the doctor, they've got the autonomy, follow doctor's orders, you know, like we've got to do what they say. It's so disempowering. And what's interesting when you think about this like more feminine approach, it's like helping people to go into the emotions, into the intuition, and giving them the power of autonomy. Then you can go and do it yourself at home. You don't need to keep coming back to me, paying hundreds and hundreds of pounds, you know, to sit in the Compass Therapy Centre, you know, and blah, blah, blah. No, let's give people the power to grow their own mushrooms at home, you know, and then they've got their own little kits, and everyone can just start flourishing then. You know what I mean? And we could become that tribe, and Mother Mushroom can just help us all through it. Yeah. And if you look at interesting research about female and male shamans that work with San Pedro, which is another... They call it the grandfather, and this is like a 12-hour journey and really embodying more and more of the light. Lots of revelations in that space. And if you're held maybe in a breathwork session as well, it can be really cathartic. But when you look at male and female shamans that get initiated in other cultures that have not lost an indigenous pathway like we haven't got any shamans now, we're having to learn it ourselves. And that's the path that I'm on, you know, like sitting and learning and being taught by this other wisdom, and then looking to my elders for support to ground it all and make sure I'm staying in integrity. But there's this research that looks at male and female shamans in the Incan tradition working with San Pedro, and the males go through this process of having a teacher, and the teacher teaches them all about it, and they have to have this altar and specific items on the altar that bring powers. And then the client comes and they journey with the client, and they say, I'm going to go and do battle now with the dark forces on your behalf. And then you have to come back and see me if it comes back again, or I'll remove the curse that was put on you. So the shaman's got all the power. And when you look at the female shaman, she says, I didn't have any teachers. I just sat and I listened to the medicine. So San Pedro told me what to do. And I might have a bit of a table and an altar, and I might have sacred items on it, but I know that the power doesn't come from them. The power comes from me. And rather than saying I'm doing battle on your behalf to my clients, I say, right, what are you not taking responsibility for? What are you not looking at? Let me give you some holding so that you can go in and feel that pain, and that you can look at what that pain's caused you to do in the world. And take responsibility for your own life. And then if you need me again, I'm here, but I'm encouraging you. You've got this. Go on, go on, go on. So for me, that's an amazing like metaphor for what's going on in the West. We're taking ownership of people's healing. We're not enabling them to become their own healers. And with your path, with this meditation, there's all this idea about gurus. We need to find space for our own guru and learn to trust it.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And then work together to become more equal in society. You know, we've all got different skill sets, but it don't mean that either of us is better than anybody else. If we can celebrate each other's skill sets, you know, we're just gifting then. And it's all win-win, isn't it?
We give our power away so much, so easily, don't we? It's almost, we wait for the doctor to tell us that we're okay to feel healed, or we wait for the, you know, for the piece of plastic, you know, when we're doing a COVID test to you know, am I okay? Am I not? I'm sick now, or I'm not sick, because, do you know what I mean? And
how much more sick's the world with all the plastic that's come off all of them unnecessary tests?
I like
anyway.
The you know, we are ultimately our own guru, aren't we? Do you know what I mean? And I think if we can create some space and potentially have a platform to remember that power and own it. I think, you know, you're talking about taking ownership, you know, and what was coming to mind there was a sense of, because the psychedelics, they're going to go into the parts of you, not always the case, but you're integrating what maybe we perceive as the shadow, the parts of you which are unwanted, the parts of you that we're ashamed of, that we're afraid of, but all day, every day, we as a society, we project the unwanted parts of us onto the world, and it reaches out as a blame, doesn't it, or an attack?
Yeah.
And I think even just the conversation and understanding alone about projection is the first step towards a greater understanding of each other and ourselves.
Taking responsibility,
and
self-awareness.
Then, absolutely, the awareness then of understanding that actually I need to take responsibility. I mean, we don't want to. It's a taboo subject, isn't it? And it's not a very hot topic because we don't want to own our darker side. There's an alter ego here, isn't there? You know what I mean? We watch. It runs through the movies. Obviously, you've got your Star Wars. The dark side. You know what I mean? And you've got like the Hulk, the green-eyed monster, and the respectable, Professor, the Bruce Banner. You know what I mean? And Jekyll and Hyde, and it runs through everything, really, isn't it? And I think if we started to potentially shine a light, a compassionate one, on our alter ego, on them blind spots that we project onto the world unconsciously, because it's unconscious. The shadow is not, it's in the shadows. So we have to shine this light. I mean, psychedelics will certainly shine a light on it, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It's, you almost don't have a choice. And when we can take ownership, and because we tell lies, don't we? We lie, we disown it, we deflect it, go, no, that's not mine, that's not me. And then we can actually go, okay, you know what? That's mine. And unfortunately, society shame you even more for you.
I encourage, celebrate yourself for doing that, because that really is what it's all about. Becoming authentic.
Yeah.
Takes so much courage.
Yeah.
To sit and look.
Yeah.
Like I have this beautiful little boy, Frankel. He's amazing, and I share him with his father. And we didn't make it as a couple. And there are times when I'll project. I'll need something from him, or like he won't have, I don't know, like looked after. He'll come back with a snot on his face or something like that, And he's fine. Our son's fine. He's okay. But I notice like this. Takes a lot of courage, but really looking at where am I projecting onto his father?
Yeah.
Like where am I projecting? Do I feel a bit bad because I'm so overstretched? There's these ideas about, being a really good mother that I'm talking about, but do I feel somewhere deep inside this bit of a guilt that I'm not fully being present for my son?
Mm-hmm.
I like being a part-time mum. I like that me and his dad have split up because it means I get to have loads of space to do my scholarship. Also means I get to have loads of space to take clients, where I can sit in these ceremonial spaces in these amazing sacred realms and do all that stuff, which sets me on fire, which helps me feel like I'm serving the world. But this other part, like this little gremlin inside, like, oh, you should be serving your son. You should be serving your son, And so when he comes back from his dad's with a bit of a snotty face or his nappy's up his ass crack, it's like, oh, he's not looked after him properly.
Yeah.
But of course he has.
Yeah.
It's okay, but that's just like one example of like, you've got to own it, haven't you? You've just got to own it.
It's so easy to blame and shame other people nowadays, isn't it? You know what I mean? It almost becomes something we do so well. You know what I mean? We project out, we blame and shame others, we judge others, and really inevitably we're always just being shown our own movie.
Yeah, I feel like you have to tell one of yours now. Come on, we'll help everybody be brave. Well, you're thinking of your example and I've said mine. I encourage all the listeners to think of just one example of their own, what they're projecting, and then start really groundedly to look at that over the next few days to a couple of weeks, and have this intention to like, right, how can I hold that? How can I point that finger
back at myself?
Yeah. And think, right, with loving, compassion, it could take such courage, celebrating myself, loving, where does that come from? Where's the need in there?
Yeah.
How can I accept that? Or how can I integrate that? How can I help myself with that?
Yeah.
Yeah? So come on, let's hear yours.
I think,
You're picking a safe one.
You know, I mean, I've become probably a very good at like being tidy. You know what I mean? You know, in and around my own home, and then anything that, you know, was maybe when I was living with the baby's mum, you know, and if the place was untidy, I'd just project that it was her fault. You know, she's been untidy, you know, or she hasn't done the dishes, when really I'm not owning that part of me which is untidy.
Needs order.
Yeah, that needs order, that wants to create order, that needs
control.
Yeah, you know, and so that then it just becomes a blame, you know, so you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're not keeping the place tidy, when really, first and foremost, there's an opportunity for me to own within my shadow the part of me which is untidy, you know what I mean? And which you know, like, which is potentially, I don't know, lazy, or I'm not saying my partner's ever been lazy, you know what I mean, and untidy, because I know there's parts of her which is absolutely, you know, she's very steadfast and very consistent, and she'll get shit done. And then it's just the trigger then, and really the trigger of to lay blame and to shame.
And then that causes an argument,
It
doesn't
just
it?
causes
Separation.
that's exactly what it does, and what it's done just causes a shit show. You know, and through potentially a lack of compassionate communication, non-violent communication, you know, this stuff just stores. It stores and stores and stores, and then, you know, it'll be other stuff that stores, and then all of a sudden there's just a separation. And
this idea of you this, you that,
that's
you
it.
this,
You've
you
done
that.
this, you've done that, and it's all pointing
Why are
fingers.
you not this?
Yeah.
Why can't you do this?
All that, you know, and I think certainly from my perspective, you know, what I do know now and what I am integrating within my own shadow and what I am taking responsibility for, you know, I can truly say that there was times in our relationship where I shamed and blamed, and didn't take ownership, and didn't open up a bridge for communication, and then things just, you know, there was inner anger, there was resentment, blaming and shaming, and it caused separation. And then, you know, I then perceived that as a lack of love, you know, and yeah, when there's then almost a closing down of and a lack of lovingness, you can't access each other.
No.
You know what I mean? I couldn't access parts of my own openness, and I also couldn't access parts of my partner, and vice versa. Do you know what I mean? And then it's almost easy to use other, you know, avenues to access that lovingness, because there's no emotional charge or there's no trigger. You know, and this way I think loads of relationships just break down.
Yeah.
You know, and I try to own my own stuff, and I try to use the modality of meditation to bring awareness around this stuff, you know what I mean? I wouldn't say I was an expert in relationship, because I'm certainly not, you know, but I certainly am trying my best to shine a compassionate light on my own stuff nowadays and take ownership, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Without dehumanizing myself at
Yeah.
the same time,
Yeah.
you know, and without giving myself a bad rap. You know, we do make mistakes, and I hold my hand up, and I have told lies, and I've tried to protect them lies, and really the truth is difficult to own. I think sometimes though it's important that we find a container to be able to certainly be vulnerable with our truth, because sometimes, you know, you spoke before about being safe and feeling safe. If you don't feel safe to speak your truth, you don't speak your truth.
No.
You know what I mean? So
That's what it's all about, isn't it? Really being scared.
That's
being
it.
scared of not being good enough, and being scared of not being loved.
That's right.
Being scared of not belonging.
Yeah.
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 And it's a shame, you know, we're so fragmented as a society, you know, we've not a tribe anymore. We've not brought up in a community where they see everything we go through, all of our celebrations and all of our woundings. They don't know our story. You know, we're not known. We don't really belong. And it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard. So really encouraging you and celebrating you, you know, for this, like, trying to be compassionate with all of that, but still taking responsibility, still trying to have this compassionate space for the other as well.
It's easy to brand people nowadays,
Yeah.
though, isn't it, Bo? You know what I mean?
My practice is like, what do I need? What's
Yeah.
really going on for me? So whenever I feel that emotional charge, like coming back to my baby's dad, for example, instead of writing that text, I'll sit and I'll wait and I'll think, right, how can I turn this and phrase this from my heart about what's going on for me? What's going on for me?
Yeah.
And that's been a process, you know, it's took a while. There's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of
It's a practice in
backwards
itself,
and
isn't it?
forwarding. Yeah, because at the heart of it, what we both want is, I want him to be happy, I want him to be well, I want him to thrive in his life, because that means he's more available to our son.
Yeah.
And that's what's really important. It's about him.
Yeah.
And as a woman, as a mother, you know, if I'm not angry at his dad and I'm not resenting his dad and blaming his dad, I'm a better mum as well, you know, holding that space. And at times when we cross over and we're in each other's company, there's just more peace and more harmony. And my son's seeing that, because it's so hard for him to be from a separate family. You know, he really grieves his dad when his dad's not there, and he grieves me when I'm not there. You know, tell each of us how much he misses each other of us, which is so sad for this little boy. So we really have to be responsible, don't we, and hold our own stuff. And then the stuff that's really big, like recently he got with a girlfriend and he'd had my son around her, and we'd had an agreement earlier on that if that happened, we'd wait till the other was ready, and really respect the preciousness of that, you know, because children attach on to people.
Of course.
They remember tribe and they love everyone, and they're so innocent and so open.
That's right.
And I picked him up once and he said that he loved this girl, and that was so cutting for me.
Yeah.
Really, really hurt. And I could have got really, really angry, but I did really well not to, and to just say to him, look, your life's your life. You do what you want with your life, but we did have this agreement. You did commit to it. And, you know, like, I just pray that you do the right thing. I want you to be happy. I want you to have this partner. I want you to feel fulfilled in your life. But there's also this element of, you know, not letting myself be walked all over and trying to keep him in alignment with his integrity. And I just said, my prayer is that you just do the right thing. And you know what? Ever since I've been like that, he's not mentioned this girl's name. He's really stuck to it. And I feel like if I'd have been like, oh my God, you know, this, that and the other, and I'd have gone angry at him.
Yeah.
Because he did get angry, because he wanted to have this girl. He wanted to go on walks at the weekend with his son and this new girl and play happy families with him and go to this wedding and all these kinds of things. So it was hard for him to go, I want what I want, you know, and I'm not going to give you, and you know, that selfishness. But because of my de-armament, like I just de-armed, and I said, this is how much it hurts, and you know that really, and I know, like, I don't want to hurt you, you don't want to hurt me. You know, just really said it from where I was, and was honest and vulnerable and about and reminding him of his integrity. And honestly, it just was harmonious. And so that worked really, really well. But
and you can still navigate a
practice.
conscious experience between two people, or because you're still a family, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We're bound together, me and
You're
him.
bound?
No matter what, we're bound together, you know, through this little boy. And it's really about him, really. You know, and that's what we're all here for, isn't it? For the next generation.
Yeah.
To see them new lives come into this existence and be amazed at the butterflies, or, you know, the caterpillar turned into a butterfly. How amazing is that?
I mean, I think one thing for us as you know, as we grow and mature into adults is to remember our playful side, our divinity, our innocence. Do you know what I mean? And to give ourselves permission to play out. You know what I mean? We're not playing anymore, are we? You know, or we're not playing enough.
No.
We're not having, you know, enough fun, and we're not wonder seeking anymore.
No.
You know, there's a lot. We're not curious anymore. We're not following an adventure anymore.
No.
You know, we become almost linear. You know, we're not expanding into.
Also serious, isn't it?
Yeah, too serious.
I say to a lot of my clients that have got depression, you know, this real kind of like being overtaken by sadness, the inertia of sadness, that really you can do a lot of work on the woundings, but because you get so stuck in this pattern of inertia and sadness as a habit, the only way to break out of that, the antidote to sadness, is joy.
Yeah.
So you have to go and find ways to experience joy.
Yeah, and laughter.
At first, it's hard because those neuronal networks, they've forgotten how to laugh.
That's right.
Don't get this surge of serotonin straight away. There's not a reward feedback from the things what you should be feeling pleasure from, because the brain's networks have shut down. Your hormone system, your body's not supporting that joy.
That's right.
So it's a bit of a thing
And
you
you
have to take
reprogram the
fun
nervous
seriously.
system, haven't you? Yeah.
At the beginning, you
Yeah.
have to take fun seriously, and then it can become fun.
Yeah.
And that's where community is important, isn't it? You know, finding those people who
You can feel
accept
safe
you,
to be
make
silly.
you feel safe.
Yeah.
Go and have a laugh with them.
Yeah.
Go and have a laugh with them as a part of your
Yeah.
experience.
It's such medicine, isn't it? When we're just laughing.
Yeah.
When we're laughing at each other, when we're celebrating each other. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. And don't take yourself too seriously either.
Yeah. I think there's a time to be serious, but I think the more serious we become, the more play we've got to add into that cauldron, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So, you know, I think we're sort of leaning towards the end of a very flowing conversation. And not sure, you know, I can't even remember what we've spoken about there. We've just been in flow, you know. So talking about a healing modality for anyone listening, you know, where would, you know, certainly from your own perspective, because I know you've got so many different credentials as a human where you can hold space. What direction would you place people in? You know, with the potential of being able to integrate, to heal, and to process trauma. Because trauma comes in many forms as well, doesn't it, Bo?
Yeah.
You know, what's trauma? You know, what can we even class or how can we measure trauma? You know, so
Well, you need a three-pronged approach. You need a three-pronged approach. So you have to invest in digging up the roots, and that's cathartic. That's a bit gnarly.
Yeah.
That's where you really go deep. And that also includes that shadow work as well. Because the roots of the trauma, the things that have happened to you, have made you act in certain ways, like we've been sharing, where you haven't been in integrity.
Yeah.
So you have to dig up the roots. That's the gnarly bit. And it's good to be held in things like that.
Yeah.
You know, and there's all different modalities you can look at, from sitting with a therapist and going steady and slow, all the way through to psychedelics.
Yeah, and heavy breath work, trauma.
Yeah, breath work, all those kinds
Conscious
of
connected
things.
breaths. What's the holotropic breathing? All that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah. So any kind of way that you're getting into the somatics of it as well, even things like 5 rhythms or, you know, somatic body work, you know, there's all different kinds of modalities where you can work to process. EMDR, for example, going for psychotherapy. You know, there's all different types of modalities there to work on trauma. And then the second prong is making sure that you're taking care of yourself. Because when you start digging up the roots, like when you mess about in your garden, it makes a bit of a mess, doesn't it? It looks a bit messy.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that you've got a little boat to carry yourself in while you're digging up the roots. And those kinds of things look like the restorative work, the taking some time for self-care, the resting. If you have a weekend where you're going to work at home, set yourself a space up. You might do a breathwork session online. You might have a bit of a psychotherapy trauma session, and then making sure that night that you go and have some really good food.
Yeah, and have a nice bath.
You have a bath, and that you watch a really good film. You know, do something really nourishing, and then give yourself time and space. Don't keep picking at it. Leave it time and space to, like when you shake up the snow globe, you've got to put it down and wait for it all to settle, to see clearly again, haven't you? So this little boat, this container, that's really important. It looks like having a bit of a regular practice that you can get to know, that becomes support. Also working with that energy of the inner nurturer. So in what more ways can you cultivate self-care? Are you a bit frazzled? Do you need to take more time out of your schedule? Does it look like saying no to something? You know, just so you can have some time and space to rest. Restorative yoga is massive for me. Anyone's welcome to come on my Wednesday night deep rest parties
Nice.
that hold on Zoom. That's free. 1.5 hours, 8:30 on a Wednesday UK time. Just get in touch for the details. And then the third prong of it is cultivating bliss as an antidote to it all. It's what you've just been talking about, making space for joy. And that also looks like maybe following some of the guidance you get about your higher self. Because I get a lot of joy, and I know you get a lot of joy from sacred service. And if you can turn your work into your passion and then make it pay, you've done it. Right? You've done it. So that's the third prong. The third prong of cultivating bliss looks like taking steps towards manifesting your dream life as an act of self-service, as an act of joyful co-creation. Cultivating joy also looks like not self-care, because self-care is the second prong, but cultivating joy looks like going and having some fun as an experience, you know, just to have that time out to experience being human, out of the madness, out of the trauma processing, out of the needing to take care of yourself and out of the schedule, just to go and just have fun, let your hair down. So you've got to think about, you know, who are the people that you want to spend your time with? Who are the people that bring you joy? And then making prayers for your worthiness and entitlement to be around that. And if you haven't got it, call it in. Call it in.
It starts with an idea, doesn't it? Just call it in. Starts with an intent.
Call it in. And it's so hard when you're an adult. Like, I've been placed in this new town with my son and we don't know anybody. And it's hard to make friends. Like, when you're a kid, like, I see my son, I've got a dinosaur. Do you like it? Do you want to be my mate? Done. Do you want to come for tea? Done. Right? But when you're an adult, it's harder. And we've all got these anxieties about who we are and how we want to be seen and blah, blah, blah. And these masks that we put on and stuff like that. And so, cultivate more space in your life to make new friends that are going to support you in your unfolding and bring you joy and be discerning as well, you know, like take awareness to your preciousness. You know, you don't have to just let anybody in. You know, be careful with yourself and as an act of self-love, you know, be discerning with who you let into your inner circle. And then take good care of them.
Nice. Lovely.
So, three-pronged approach. Dig up the roots in safe space. Make a little boat to carry it all the work that you're doing on those roots, and then cultivate bliss. Bliss in service of making your great life, surrounding yourself with great people, having good experiences.
Lovely. Great advice. Thank you for sharing that.
No worries.
Okay. So I feel we've come to a natural end. We've been talking for an hour and a half. So anyone who's listening in today, I think I hope you've enjoyed it first and foremost. You know, I think I just sit here and I listen to a friend of mine and a human being like Bo, who shares these ideas and concepts, these enlightening conversations around all matters related really to the magic of life, you know, to the mystery of life. And I, for one, have enjoyed, you know, listening to Bo today and then being a part of this happening. So I trust that we've potentially provoked and maybe pushed some buttons within your own internal experience for you to take a compassionate look and maybe start to potentially a platform for some sort of integration and healing in your own journey, whatever that looks like. So Bo, just want to say a big thank you to coming along and sharing your story and sharing, you know, what's alive for you. I think as a personal thank you for, you know, you've been such a rock for me over the last year, you know, 6 months especially, and you held space for an incredible experience for me at Christmas time in December, and that was for me was a potential game changer in my own healing journey, and a wonderful opportunity for me to shed a lot of tears. Really, I felt like I cried the river, really, you know. And you held a wonderful space for me, so you know I appreciate that so much. And I think as a woman, you hold that mothering energy for me to be a soundboard, you know, and free from any judgments as well. You know, there's never been any judgment. You've held, you know, as much as my light as well as much as my darkness as well. So I appreciate that. And just love having you here in Liverpool. We're going to go for some food now. We're going to head home, chill out, have some food and continue just, you know, enjoying and celebrating each other for the evening. So I appreciate you so much. You do some great work in the world, and I'm excited for how things, you know, are going to continue to unfold for you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honour and a privilege to be here, to be invited, to have this opportunity to share and, to remember and pull threads together and, just have this opportunity to co-create, you know, with the people that have been listening and just giving thanks and praise to them and their lives, and, you know, blessing every single body, every single heart, every single mind, every single soul that's trying to be more, to grow, to heal, to clean up, to show up. You know, blessing all of the people in the world that haven't found a way to this yet. You know, may we all find that. May we all find it with ease and grace. And if anybody, you know, wants to get in touch, please do.
Yeah.
Please do.
What's the best way to
Can
contact
we put
you?
my details
Yeah.
underneath?
Yeah, we'll get, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Have you got a website? Yeah, or you got an email? What's your email?
I'm going to birth my website on the summer solstice.
Yeah, lovely. Have you got an email people can contact you on? What's your email address?
Yeah, email address is bowfocké@gmail.com.
Lovely.
Yep.
Rainbow Goddess, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so
Bless your
welcome.
life.
Thank you.
Have a lovely evening. Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, guys, that's it. Episode 22 is a wrap. Look forward to checking in for the next episode. Keep in touch, have fun, and yeah, keep it real. Thank you.
Shine.
Bye for now. Creating Space is sponsored by the Scouse Guru app, an all-purpose meditation app that feeds into all your needs, developing peace of mind, increasing mental focus, lowering stress levels, while discovering inner stillness, awakening your potential and educating you on all matters related to human behaviour and personal development. Download the app for free on the App Store or get it on Google Play today.